Hey guys, so today I'm going to briefly teach you the effects of World War One, since I missed class, and do my best here, show you some pictures and that kind of thing. I think this will help before the test tomorrow. So the questions were, was the Treaty of Versailles a fair and effective settlement? Very important treaty, and it's going to have a huge effect on the next 20 years. Well, forever actually. Should the U.S. have approved the Treaty of Versailles? Why or why not? Okay, so here we are with the effects of war, and you need to know that the American troops were called doughboys, and it says in late 1917 they're going to come in to Europe with Wilson declaring war, well, Congress declaring war after Wilson's speech, and really give a shot in the arm, so to speak, to the European soldiers, what we would call the Entente, who were going to fight on their side. And they're going to have suffered so many casualties. You saw that in the centers, the stations yesterday, the pie charts, the number of casualties. I'll show you another one that's a little different. So these doughboys are going to arrive as American troops and boost the morale of these allies. They're going to just be so relieved that new troops are coming in, fresh legs, haven't seen war all these years like the Europeans have. So it's going to also help demoralize the Germans as these Americans come in and see the Germans see all these fresh troops coming in, and they can't supply that. Okay, quick picture of the doughboys. Here is sort of it talks about their nickname and what they wore. A lot of wool clothing here. Here's trench boots. It says called little tanks. That's what they called them. It also they also would wear 2 pairs of socks with the boots, and you know why from the stations as to trench foot and things like that. Okay, so next we have the Bolshevik Party. Now, if you remember when we were in Miss Page's room the other day, we talked about the Russian Revolution was a reason Wilson became more comfortable with going in on the side of the Entente, because now the Russians had overthrown the Tsar and were experiencing a lot more freedom. Here you see the Bolshevik Party, led by Vladimir Lenin, takes over in Russia and establishes a communist regime. November 1917, and this is just insane, leaves the war. Okay, Russia now leaves the war on the part of the Entente and signs a treaty with Germany. Now, I was able to discuss this in first period. Someone mentioned that the Russians were so annihilated through this war. We'll see the numbers in a second, and that may have been a cause of why they withdrew. Total agreement with that. However, they're totally flipping sides here, and that's something interesting to remember. So they're going to sign a treaty with Germany to kind of just say, we're done with this, and they're going to leave the war. Germany finds this to be fantastic, and that's sort of what I've drawn up here. So here's France, here's Russia. It's kind of very crude drawing, sorry, but here's Germany, and now Germany can just turn and face France head on. Even though we know there's some new American troops here, the doughboys, this line, this front, as you remember seeing from the stations, is no longer needed because Russia is no longer fighting. So that was great for Germany on one battlefront. Now, I want to show you a quick picture of Lenin. This you need to remember. We discussed this in Ms. Page's room, the Red Scare. So the Bolshevik Party is going to come in with this red flag with the sickle and the star here, and this is a picture of Lenin. Okay, so also you need to know John J. Pershing. Here's his picture, and General John J. Pershing is going to be in charge of what's called the AEF, American Expeditionary Force, and trying to get that, here that is, and he's going to insist, excuse me, when the Americans come in to Europe, he's going to be in charge, and he's going to say the Americans are going to stay in American units. We're not mixing. We're not mixing with the French. We're not mixing with the British. And that actually became a great strategy because the Americans knew him. He was their commander, and they're going to follow his lead. And so more so than if they had been pushed into regiments with other country leaders. So John J. Pershing is there. All right, so it says fighting ends March 21st, 1918. So you see, we're not involved here long. Late 1917, March 21st, 1918, the war is going to end here. It says the Germans led a ferocious assault. By June, they're 20 miles from Paris, France, but us and the French hold the ground there. Remember that, okay, very important. So from August to October, the Allies are going to lead an offensive through the Argonne Forest, pushing the Germans back to the German border. Argonne Forest is Belgium. You will see this same situation replay in World War II. Different outcome, but we're going to push the Germans back to the German border. November 11, 1918, Germans are going to sign an armistice, and they're going to surrender their arms, give up much of their navy, and evacuate the occupied territory. So I would say we're involved about a year. Total U.S. fatalities, 112,000, it says, roughly. Not nearly as many as the others are going to experience. I want to show this. See how many Russia had suffered? 9 million. Germany and Austria-Hungary, 7 million. Ours significantly less. Now, this is a different number, 364. This includes wounded, this chart. So you just see it's a huge difference. I want you to see how many Russia, how many casualties they have, which we said may have resulted in part of their removal from the war. So Wilson decides he's going to take center stage here, and he's going to create a peace plan called 14 points. Why is it called 14 points? Because it had 14 points, okay? Like point 1, point 2, all the way to 14. And he's going to say there are no secret treaties, okay? So from that point on, no more secrets. Everything will be done in the open. And he says we will reduce German arms, okay, meaning scale back their military. And he's going to push self-determination, that the countries that are left behind, especially, remember where this all started, remember in Bosnia. So he's going to say those countries should decide their own borders based on their own ethnicity, not sort of Austria-Hungary. Remember, they were gobbling up these different groups. He's going to say, no, these ethnic people should decide on their own borders and not be forced into a nation with everyone else. And the big one is he's going to push a League of Nations, which is nations that would promote peace and protect each other's territory. Sort of a forerunner to the United Nations. The idea that instead of immediately going to war against another country, a country would meet with other nations and try to use diplomacy. All right, so Versailles is the Paris Peace Conference where the final decision will be hashed out as to what to do to Germany. And the big four are there: U.S., Britain, France, Italy. Remember, Italy comes in on our side during the war. Austria-Hungary and Russia are left out of the treaty. And it says they want to blame and punish Germany. The Allies, Britain, France, Italy, do not want to follow Wilson's 14 points. They want to blame and punish Germany. Now remember, it's their countryside that's been blown up, torn apart. A lot of these nations have lost so many more men than us. They've been in the war longer. So definitely they think that Germany is to blame for their aggressiveness, and they want to take it out on them. That's not really Wilson's plan at all. It says most of the 14 points are going to get ignored, but the League of Nations is not. So it's the only thing that the Allies or the Entente agree with. And it says they create 9 new nations in Europe. Czechoslovakia is created during this time, and Yugoslavia. They change the borders, and they actually stick all these Serbs, Bosnians, all the Albanians, all these people get stuck in the same country. And that's not the best idea, as will play out later. Germany is demilitarized, so total wipeout of their military. And I discussed military is their life, okay? They are so disciplined, and yet here they're not going to even have a military. Now remember, Wilson said we're going to reduce the military, but not totally get rid of it. They're going to want to wipe out the military, very little left behind. And this group is going to say Germany must pay reparations. Look at this, folks. $33 billion. Germany doesn't have $33 billion. Remember, okay, we're talking about 1916, 1917. They definitely don't have this kind of money, and they've just finished a war that they lost. And probably the most damaging is Germany must admit war guilt. They're prideful people. And now they've got to say this is all our fault on our backs, and we're going to pay this much money back to the Entente for what we did. So Wilson's plan is much more nice. I don't really know how to say it. He's more understanding. He does think that Germany's military should be reduced, but he's not going to push for reparations like this. He knows they can't afford that. He's not going to push that they admit war guilt. All right, so the results, Germany goes broke trying to repay this debt. Germany becomes emotionally devastated. And this is, I put here, think of Lincoln's Reconstruction Plan. Lincoln is just very similar to Wilson. He doesn't want to annihilate the South after the war. The 10% plan, if you remember that. So many others in the government that time hated that plan. And it says here that Wilson's got nobody on his side really, because he wants to kind of go a little easier on Germany because he knows they can't afford all this. Germany is emotionally devastated. Russia's ignored. The whole issue that they left the war, they're just totally ignored, which becomes a problem later. And it says the U.S. Senate fights against the treaty. Okay, so basically it says they don't like the League of Nations. So that was Wilson's 14th point that was actually approved by the Versailles Treaty. And our own United States Senate doesn't like it. Okay, and it says Senator Henry Cabot Lodge is going to speak out against it. He is going to take a stand. Remember his name. He will come up later. Matter of fact, I can show you his picture. I need to show you something else too. So here is Henry Cabot Lodge. He's going to speak out against that. One more. I want to show you an interesting cartoon here that shows this is how the U.S. Senate saw the League of Nations. They saw it as us, as Uncle Sam, with our hands tied behind our back, that we would have to get approval before we ever go to war, that we would be forced to always negotiate. And these senators are not going to like that. They want us to be able to make up our own decisions, go to war if we want to. So it says the Senate votes against the Versailles Treaty. Meanwhile, Wilson will suffer a massive stroke. Okay, it says Wilson's legacy as a progressive starts prohibition, is president when the 19th Amendment is passed, brings about victory in World War I, predicts future wars without a League of Nations and his 14 points, and he was totally on it because we will have World War II. One more picture. This is actually a picture I took of the palace at Versailles when I went in college to Paris. And this is so glamorous, this palace, Louis XIV's palace. This is where they're going to sign that treaty. And I think it's a little ironic that sitting in this hallway, which I wouldn't call it a hallway, but anyway, sitting in this room with the mirrors, the hall of mirrors, and the windows, and the extravagance and the gold, they're going to decide to make Germany pay. Okay? All right. So let's go back to your essential questions. Was the Treaty of Versailles a fair and effective settlement? Absolutely not. It was not fair. It was not effective. It is not going to prevent future war. It's actually going to bring about war, as Germany is so devastated that a very charismatic leader will rise up from the ashes in Germany and promise the people jobs and hope, because they're going to have nothing. And he will promise them all that, and his name is Hitler. Should the U.S. approve the Treaty of Versailles? Why or why not? I mean, it's kind of bad that the Americans kind of thumb their nose at a League of Nations and say we're not going to negotiate ever. And at the same time, though, the Treaty of Versailles was so unfair. But the League of Nations was the big hang-up in the U.S. Senate. All right, so I have taught the lesson. If you have any questions, email me before tomorrow. I hope to be there. Hopefully we're all better. excuse my appearance, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.